Sonic is almost 30 years old at this point and has created a huge legacy that really helped put Sega on the map back in the 90s. Save for a few titles that have received accolades, many would say Sonic has been in quite a slump the past 10 years or so. Saying Sonic has gone through questionable initiatives is an understatement. Sonic Mania, the latest iteration for the Blue Hedgehog, shows that Sega decided it was time for Sonic to really go back to his 16-bit roots. Well, this time they meant it. But what do I mean by that? I'm going to review Sonic Mania, but first I'll discuss most of the original games in the 16-bit era and particular titles that were influenced by its legacy afterward. If you want to go straight to the review, skip to this time. What can really be said about the original Sonic games these days? Although apparently there's recent doubt if the original games were good to begin with. I don't know what the hell that is about. They were good platforming games back then and they're good now. The very first title still plays extremely well. It strikes a good balance between fast-paced gameplay and careful platforming. Sonic 2 had a stronger emphasis on speed and action than the first title, and it makes for more exciting gameplay, but it still did not sacrifice the challenge of a single-player experience. This is considered the magnum opus of the entire franchise. There was also Sonic CD, which was more of a spin-off to the series. It had deeper gameplay mechanics and more elaborate stage design. Many also consider this the best in the series, but I honestly didn't enjoy it very much. I definitely appreciate the ambitious mechanics, but just couldn't find myself enjoying the stage designs. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the complete version of Sonic 3, overhauled the artistry to make it look a bit more like a Western cartoon, but also had subtle additions to the characters and enemies, making them look more detailed than before. It certainly has some satisfying gameplay and evolved the basic mechanics by including more playable characters with unique abilities. There were also a few unreasonable design choices. If anyone ever says they like either Sandopolis stages, they are lying or should be escorted to the nearest mental facility. Who thought Get Blue Spheres wasn't the most boring crap in the world? Although bonus stages were never a strong point for these titles. The end of the 16-bit era began a transition for Sonic to 3D gameplay. More on that another time. Eventually, Sega would attempt to make Sonic games similar to the Genesis era as a way to honor its legacy. Notable attempt was Sonic Advance, developed by Dimps. Compared to the original titles, the stage design is extremely lackluster and uninteresting. The gameplay itself is solid, but there's literally nothing remarkable or memorable about the entire game, and particular mechanics and physics just aren't at the forefront. I have no doubt in my mind that it will further fade into obscurity as the years come. Another one, developed by the same team, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, Episode 1. Sega was so confident that this title would revive the spirit of the original Sonic titles that they gave it a name like that. Unfortunately, it suffers the same issue as Sonic Advance, but with even worse gameplay. The physics and mechanics just don't work in this title. It feels lazily put together. The entire aesthetic is extremely unappealing as well. It looks like a goddamn mobile game. What, was this game developed for phones? Oh. It was. Episode 2, released nearly 2 years later, was a little less shitty. The artistry was slightly improved and it received a few decent additions to its gameplay, but it's too little too late, especially considering everything else about it is still broken. Before Mania, the last attempt to return to Sonic's glory days was Generations. Well, half of it. I'd like to save my overall thoughts on this game for a later time, but I'll say this about the classic Sonic gameplay since it relates to the 16-bit era. I was shocked at how much praise this portion of the game received. I found it to be absolutely terrible. Controlling classic Sonic didn't feel good at all. The momentum physics, what could be argued as the best part of the original series, are completely absent and the stage design is almost nonsensical. They followed the same stage layout philosophy as Dimps and just throw speed boosters everywhere as a way to distract you from the poor design. I honestly found modern Sonic's trial and error gameplay to be much more enjoyable. But like I said, more on this another time. Now we finally get into Sonic Mania, developed by Headcanon and Pagoda West Games. Despite that the original titles were developed in Japan, this blast from the past would be solely developed by Western teams. Most notably, Christian Whitehead. He got Sega's attention when he was recreating Sonic CD in true widescreen format on iPhone using his own program, and was later hired to give the same treatment to Sonic 1 and 2 for mobile devices. And not only did he make these two classics look better, he also fixed particular glitches and bugs that were in the original versions. Now this is an admirable Sonic fan. Instead of wasting his time making disgusting fan art or assaulting GameStop employees, he uses energy to make a difference in the franchise. And now, let's see how that reflects with this brand new addition for everyone's favorite hedgehog. I was honestly unsure of this game when it was first revealed. I felt that it might be a bit too derivative of the Genesis era, especially in regards to its aesthetic. Sonic and Tails returned to their design from the second installment, which was my personal favorite. Although I noticed Knuckles has sprites that derive from both Sonic 3 as well as Knuckles Chaotix. A bit jarring since they look significantly different from each other. Since we're talking about the visuals first, I have to say I wasn't entirely wrong. It has a decent selection of original stages and even brought back a good amount of cut content from the classic titles. Half of them derived from immediately familiar zones, such as Green Hill and Chemical Plant. Thankfully, the brand new levels look nothing less than stellar, and even the returning stages got serious makeovers that feel fresh. Just about each and every single stage is also gigantic. Most are built like mazes, but with multiple pathways to the end that intertwine with each other, more so than the original games. It helps replays feel fresh and adds incentive to exploring. Of course, it can be head-spinning when you're just trying to look for those secret bonus stages. Continuing with gameplay, everything feels perfect and responsive, as it should be. The new drop dash move is also really fun to experiment with. Not only are the stages gigantic, it has one of the highest level counts in the 2D series, only beaten out by Sonic 3 and Knuckles by one zone. Although it's worth noting you basically had to buy 2 Sonic games in order to get that full experience back in the day. Meanwhile, Sonic Mania is a meager $20, a serious bargain considering how much was put into these stages as well as the unique abilities between all 3 characters. In good classic Sonic fashion, the difficulty curve is just right. Starts off flowing and easy with the first couple stages, but the level of challenge ramps up as you progress. It can be frustrating at times, but it's all part of learning and strategizing against the obstacles as well as the enemies. And besides a bizarre glitch I ran into once... Justin, try to hit buttons.
What the hell happened now?
Try to hit more buttons. Mash everything.
I took a capture of it.
Oh, good. Okay. Unable to take it. What? The game itself functions extremely well, at least for Nintendo Switch. Momentum physics are finally recreated perfectly for this title. It hasn't felt this good to take advantage of gaining and keeping momentum since, well, Sonic 3. And here they finally managed to revive the spirit of Sonic. This is where all the iterations before had failed. This feels like if Sonic got just one more title that is of the same quality as the original trilogy that felt like a celebration of how incredibly designed those games are. This feels like the last installment that really brings the series to a finish. This affection towards the classic franchise is cemented by avoiding any of the things that led to the franchise's eventual downfall and made sure they just remained tainted memories. No Cream the Rabbit, no Jet the Hawk, no Poochie the Shadow, just obscure characters you might not have been aware of. This is what happens when you open yourself up to fan support and particular influence. Sega saw an opportunity in a programmer who has proven himself and a small team of dedicated fans who know what the core audience wants out of a Sonic game. And, overall, what anybody looking for a good 2D platformer wants. Sonic Mania proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that they know classic Sonic and how he's supposed to be more than the people within Sega or Sonic Team or whomever. While the game's incredible presentation are thanks to Whitehead and the fine people in Headcanon and Pagoda West, I think Sega really deserves recognition for allowing this to happen. After all, none of this would be possible without their flexibility and willingness to offer this opportunity to them. I'm happy to see the well-deserved praise this game is receiving and hope other game companies take note. The lesson here? Give fans a chance to help you support struggling franchises. Within reason, of course. So if you're looking for a good 2D platforming game or want to see Sonic in his former glory once again but are unsure of this title, don't hesitate. Get this game and go on this speedy new adventure that stands tall with the original trilogy. Thanks for watching.